Portishead, pɔːrtɪs଼hɛd, is a coastal town on the Severn Estuary, close to Bristol, but within the unitary authority of North Somerset, which falls within the ceremonial county of Somerset, England. It has a population of around 22,000, an increase of over 3,000 since the 2001 census, with a growth rate considerably in excess of surrounding towns. By the time of the 2011 census, the population had increased to approximately 24,000. Portishead has a long history as a fishing port. It expanded rapidly during the early 19th century around the docks, with supporting transport infrastructure. A power station and chemical works were added in the 20th century, but the dock and industrial facilities have since closed and been redeveloped into a marina and residential areas. Portishead was also the telephone control centre used by British Telecom for non-direct dialed calls to maritime vessels, a service known as Portishead Radio. The town's population is expanding, and Portishead is now primarily a dormitory town for Bristol and its environs, although a range of service industries has grown up. The headquarters of Avon and Somerset Constabulary are in Portishead. History. The name Portishead derives from the port at the head of the river. It has been called Portishead and Portstewart at times in its history and Portishead in the Domesday Book, and was locally known as Posset. The town's recorded history dates back to Roman times, although there is also evidence of prehistoric settlement, including polished flint axe heads. There were also Iron Age settlements in the area, of which Cadbury Camp was the largest. Other sites that have been identified include a 1,200 by 600 feet site that was successively occupied by the Romans, Britons and Danes. There is some evidence that it may have been the western end of the once dyke, an early medieval or possibly Roman boundary with a series of defensive linear earthworks extending to the Savernake forest near Marlborough in Wiltshire. After the Norman conquest, the manor was held by the Bishop of Coutances and later reverted to the Crown, after which William II gave it to a merchant from Bristol known as Harding and then to his son Robert Fitzharding, who became Lord of Berkeley. The Berkeley family held it for generations until it passed by marriage to the Cokes of Hokum in Norfolk. In the 14th century it belonged to Everard Lafranche. In 1621 the Bristol Corporation purchased large portions of land in Portishead and revived the manor court. The rights of the corporation over the manor was disputed, but they held it until 1836 when they sold it for £8,050. The parish of Portishead was part of the Portbury Hundred. The town was built on the mouth of a small tributary of the Severn Estuary near the mouth of the River Avon. The old pillar jetty provided protection for craft against the Bristol Channel's large tidal range, and iron rings can be seen in the high street at which fishing boats used to moor. Its position meant Portishead was used to guard the King Road, as the waters around the headland are cool. In 1497 it was the departure point for John Cabot on the Matthew. A fort was built on Battery Point, and was used during the English Civil War when the town supported the Royalists, but surrendered to Fairfax in 1645. Guns were also placed at Battery Point during World War II. The King Road was the site of a naval action in 1758 when HMS Antelope captured HMS Bellecourt, one of a French squadron returning from Quebec. A mill was built on Welle Stream, but this was replaced by tidal mills. In the 17th century the city of Bristol bought the manors of Northwestern and Portishead for access to the channel and as a place to stay outside of the city, and, in the 19th century, as a seaside resort. An outer sea wall was built allowing the local marshes to be drained and increased the land available for farming. The dominant architecture is early Victorian, with some buildings maintaining their original features. The expansion in residential property coincided with the construction of the dock, pier and the rail link to Bristol. The Royal Hotel by the pier was built in a Tudor Gothic style in 1830, to provide accommodation and catering for travellers on the steamers from Bristol, Wales and Ireland. Portishead Door. The Act of Parliament governing the enclosure of Portishead was passed in 1814, and stipulated the right to a public wharf, although there is historical evidence of nautical connections dating back to the patent rolls of 1331. Around the 1860s, at the height of the iron and steel era, a pier and a deep-water dock were built by the Bristol and Portishead Pier and Railway to accommodate the large ships that had difficulty in reaching Bristol harbour. They brought valuable cargoes from across the globe and exported local products overseas. Ships carrying coal were commonplace in Portishead docks. In the 1880s, Portishead Dock was acquired by Bristol Corporation, and was subsequently managed as part of the Port of Bristol until its closure. Portishead Power Stations. The Portishead Power Stations were coal-fed power stations built next to the dock. Construction work started on Portishead A power station in 1926. It began generating electricity in 1929 for the Bristol Corporation's Electricity Department. In 1937, its original 6 short chimney stacks were replaced by a 350 feet high stack. A second 350 feet stack was added when the power station was expanded in 1948. Construction of Portishead B power station began in 1949. It became operational in 1955. The power stations became part of the nationalised electricity industry after 1949, and were operated in turn by the British Electricity Authority, the Central Electricity Authority and the CEGB. They used summer local coal produced in the Somerset coalfield, which was delivered by train along the Portishead branch of the Great Western Railway. The line had opened on the 12th of April 1867 as the Bristol and Portishead Pier and Railway Company. It opened to the dock on the 5th of July 1879. The main supply of coal was imported by boat from Newport and Ely in South Wales. It was carried by Osborne and Wallace's of Bristol Railways. Portishead had 2 passenger stations on the GWR's Portishead branch line. The main station was near the centre of the village of Portishead, as it was then. The other was at the pier. The construction of Portishead B power station caused the original railway station to be demolished, and a replacement station was opened in the High Street on the 2nd of January 1954. The new station closed on the 7th of September 1964. The majority of the line was reopened in 2002 to transport goods from the Royal Portbury Dock. A new junction was created 3 miles from Portishead Station, and a new goods line built from there to the Royal Portbury Dock. There is a campaign group aimed at reopening the station and the short stretch of unopened line. In 2009, a report by the Association of Train Operating Companies stated that the Portishead branch was a special case for future consideration of reopening due to the large projected increase in population and congestion in the area. Portishead also had a second, short-lived, railway line, the Western, Clevedon and Portishead Railway. It ran between Weston-super-Mare and Clevedon as a standard railway line, and between Clevedon and Portishead as a light railway. The Clevedon to Portishead extension opened on the 7th of August 1907. The line closed on the 19th of May 1940 and was then dismantled by the GWR. Albright and Wilson, In 1951, Albright and Wilson built a chemical works on the opposite side of the dock from the power stations. The chemical works produced white phosphorus from phosphate rock imported through the docks into the UK. Phosphate rock was stored in concrete silos on the dockside until it was required. Electricity provided by the local power stations was used to run 6 7.5 megawatt electric arc furnaces that reduced the phosphate rock. The phosphorus was then moved in sealed railway tanks to Oldbury and to Kirby. After the closure of the factory, the decontamination included the removal of yellow and red allotropes of phosphorus. The site is now home to Portishead Volunteer Coast Guard. Closure of the dock and associated facilities. The onset of new generating capacity at Pembroke and Didcot in the mid-1970s brought about the closure of the older, less efficient air station. One generator of 4 at each of the new power stations had almost the same output of both Portishead stations combined. The newer of the 2 power stations was converted to burn oil when the Somerset coalfields closed. The 2 Radstock pits ceased production in September 1973 and the last trainload of coal departed on the 16th of November 1973. The price of oil rose steeply in the 1970s and the 2 power stations were little used after these events. Portishead A power station was closed in 1976, and the first of its 2 chimney stacks, a landmark, was demolished in September 1981, followed by the second in August 1982. Portishead B power station closed in 1982 and both of its 383 feet stacks were demolished in October 1992. Industrial activities ceased at the dock with the closure of the power stations. The Port of Bristol Authority finally closed the dock in 1992. Modern marina development. Much of the growth of Portishead's population can be attributed to the development of the former docks into a vibrant community. The former deep water dock, used to supply coal and goods to the power stations, has been fully redeveloped into a modern marina with 250 pontoon berths. The areas on each side of the marina are formerly occupied by the 2 power stations and chemical plant, have been redeveloped to provide a wide range of housing, from townhouses to social housing to exclusive flats. Development has also completed on the Portbury Ashlands to the east of the harbour, extending the area of the town further towards Portbury. Next to the Ashlands development lies Portbury Ashlands Nature Reserve. This waterfront development is now known as Portmarine. The area has varied styles of housing, including an area built in the style of a fishing village, which is modelled on the Cornish seaside town of Polperro with narrow streets and multicoloured houses. New waterside bars and restaurants, including Hall and Amp Woodhouse, Aqua and Bottolinos, have opened around the marina, with further outlets are set to open in the future, including Costa Coffee and a nearby Wetherspoons. Portishead Radio. Portishead was previously the telephone control centre used by British Telecom for non-direct dialed calls to maritime vessels, a service known as Portishead Radio. This has now been largely replaced by Inmarsat, which permits directly dialed calls made from any BT landline in the UK. The radio station had separate transmitting and receiving stations. They were constructed by the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company and operated by the General Post Office. By 1936, the station had a staff of 60 radio officers who handled over 3 million words of radio traffic per year. Following the privatization of the GPO's telephone network in 1981, the station was operated by British Telecom. Telecommunications plc. The main transmitting station, which was remotely operated, originally consisted of a large array of radio masts at nearby Portishead Downs but was replaced by a single radio mast at Clevedon. It was used until the 1970s. The receiving station's control centre and radio masts were located at High Bridge, near Burnham-on-Sea. The radio station played a vital role during the Second World War in maintaining communications with the British Merchant Navy and with patrol aircraft in the North Atlantic. During the war, all communications with ships were one-way in order to avoid revealing the ship's locations to the enemy. The station was short-staffed because many were on secondments to various government services, such as operating other radio stations and training new radio officers to work in naval convoys. In 1943, the workload was so great that a Royal Navy officer and 18 telegraphists were brought in from HMS Flowerdown, a naval shore wireless service station near Winchester. By the end of the 1980s, satellite communications had started to take an increasing share of the station's business, and a program of severe rationalization began, leading to the closure of 2 transmitting sites at Leafield and Ongar. In the radio station's penultimate year to March 1999, there were on average, per month, 571 radio telegrams, 533 radio telephone calls and 4,001 radio telex calls. In 1998, British Telecom Maritime Radio Services announced its planned closure of Portishead Radio. The long-range services ceased at midnight on the 31st of August 1999. The short-range VHF Maritime Band services closed at 12 o'clock on Sunday the 30th of April 2000, and the medium-range services at 12 o'clock on Friday the 30th of June. The station closed in April 2000. The High Bridge station has been demolished. Sedgemoor District Council adopted a local development plan in September 2004 that included the site of the receiving station for future housing development. Planning permission was granted in October 2007 for a development of 190 houses and flats on the site, and shortly afterwards the old radio station buildings were demolished. Governance. The town is the larger area served by the Town Council of Portishead and North Western. The council is made up of 18 councillors representing 6 wards: Portishead Central, Portishead Coast, Portishead East, Portishead South and Amp, North Western, Portishead Red Cliff Bay, and Portishead West. It has responsibility for local issues, including setting an annual precept to cover the council's operating costs and producing annual accounts for public scrutiny. The Town Council evaluates local planning applications and works with the local police, district council officers, and neighborhood watch groups on matters of crime, security, and traffic. The Town Council's role also includes initiating projects for the maintenance and repair of parish facilities, such as the village hall, a community centre, playing fields and playgrounds, as well as consulting with the district council on the maintenance, repair and improvement of highways, drainage, footpaths, public transport, and street cleaning. Conservation matters and environmental issues are also of interest to the council. The town falls within the unitary authority of North Somerset, although the area below high water mark, including the pier, is within Bristol. Before 1974, the parish was part of the Long Ashton Rural District. The police service is provided by Avon and Somerset Constabulary. Avon Fire and Rescue Service has a fire station in Portishead manned by retained firefighters, equipped with 2 water tenders each holding 1,800 litres. The Great Western Ambulance Service has responsibility for the area. The parish is part of the North Somerset County constituency of the House of Commons. It has been represented since 1992 by Liam Fox, a member of the Conservative Party, who was Secretary of State for Defence. 6 electoral wards exist in Portishead. Their area and total population of the same as quoted above. It is also part of the South West England constituency of the European Parliament. Geography. Physical geography. Portishead is a coastal town on the Severn Estuary. It lies northwest of Clevedon and immediately southwest of Avonmouth, just across the River Avon, which forms the boundary between Somerset and Bristol. The city of Bristol is 6 miles to the east and Portishead is approximately 110 miles west of London. On clear days, whales can be seen across the Severn Estuary from the town. The Eastwood area has been designated as a local nature reserve. It consists broadleaf woodland on a coastal limestone ridge which leads to Battery Point, which had a defensive gun position, and Portishead Point. Lighthouse is on the promontory. There is also geological interest in the fossils, folds and faults found in the area. The area immediately inland includes the Gordano Valley, which has been designated as a National Nature Reserve. The valley runs roughly northeast to southwest, between Carboniferous limestone ridges extending along the coastline between Clevedon and Portishead, and another ridge extending between Clevedon and Easton and Gordano. The area includes the villages of Clapton and Gordano, Weston in Gordano, Easton and Gordano, Walton in Gordano, Portbury and Sheepway. The M5 motorway runs along the south side of the valley, splitting briefly into 2 levels, the southwest-bound level running above the northeast-bound carriageway. The Gordano motorway service station is at the eastern end of the valley, near the Royal Portbury Dock and the Avonmouth Bridge. There is no river Gordano. Much of the valley is reclaimed land barely above sea level, drained by ditches. The Rhine's previously managed by the now amalgamated Gordano Valley Internal Drainage Board and now the responsibility of the North Somerset Internal Drainage Board. An area comprising a total of 400 acres has been designated as a biological and geological site of special scientific interest for ornithological, entomological and stratigraphic interest. Notification originally having taken place in 1971. Several sites in the valley are managed by the Avon Wildlife Trust as nature reserves. These include Weston Big Wood, Clapton Moor, Weston Moor and Walton Common. The name Gordano comes from Old English and is descriptive of the triangular shape of the whole valley from Clevedon to Portishead, being the ablative singular of the Latinized form of Gordon meaning muddy valley. Denny Island is a small rocky island of 0.6 acres, with scrub vegetation, approximately 3 miles north of Portishead. Its rocky southern foreshore marks the boundary between England and Wales, but the island itself is reckoned administratively to Monmouthshire, Wales. The tidal rise and fall in the Severn Estuary and Bristol Channel can be as great as 49 feet, second only to Bay of Fundy in eastern Canada. There has been concern about pollution levels from industrial areas in Wales and at the eastern end of the Bristol Channel. However, this tends to be diluted by the Atlantic waters. There are measurable levels of chemical pollutants, but little is known about their effects. Of particular concern of the levels of cadmium and to a lesser degree residual pesticides and hydrocarbons. Portishead Pier to Blacknor SSSI is a 177-acre geological site of special scientific interest notified in 1952. The Portishead Pier section is made up of alluvial sandstones, the best exposure of upper Carboniferous rocks in the Avonmouth coalfield. The cliff and foreshore exposures around Portishead Point provide important exposures of geological structures formed during the Variscan Mountain building episode in the Carboniferous period of geological history. Also included are important exposures of the Devonian sequence that yield several species of fossil fish. Pɔːrtɪs្hɛd scalies are the most abundant fossils, but teeth scalies of other species are also relatively common. Notably amongst the collection from this bed are plates of arthrodires, including Grainland aspis. Eastwood and Battery Point Local Nature Reserve is a 9 hectares woodland containing yew, maple, dogs, mercury and beech. The lake grounds area, built in the early 20th century around an artificial lake, is the town's main park. Adjacent to the beach and esplanade is a 100-year-old artificial lake, and a cricket pitch surrounded by sloping lawns interspersed with specimen trees. One of the UK's few surviving outdoor swimming pools is situated on the shore next to the lake grounds and is open during the summer months. In 2009, the outdoor pool was renovated by a team filming for the American TV program Ty's Great British Adventure. Above the lake grounds is Battery Point, where a gun battery was sited to protect the Severn Estuary from invasion. Climate. Along with the rest of southwest England, Portishead has a temperate climate, generally wetter and milder than the rest of England. The annual mean temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius with seasonal and diurnal variations, but the modifying effect of the sea restricts the range to less than that in most other parts of the United Kingdom. January is the coldest month, with mean minimum temperatures between 1 degree Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius. July and August are the warmest, with mean daily maxima around 21 degrees Celsius. In general, December is the dullest month and June the sunniest. The southwest of England enjoys a favoured location, particularly in summer, when the Azores High extends its influence northeastwards towards the UK. Cloud often forms inland, especially near hills, and reduces exposure to sunshine. The average annual sunshine is about 1,600 hours. Rainfall tends to be associated with Atlantic depressions or with convection. In summer, convection caused by solar surface heating sometimes forms shower clouds, and a large proportion of the annual precipitation falls from showers and thunderstorms at this time of year. Average rainfall is around 800 to 900 millimeters. About 8 to 15 days of snowfall is typical. November to March have the highest mean wind speeds, with June to August having the lightest. The prevailing wind direction is from the southwest. Demography. Portishead has a population of 22,000, an increase of over 3,000 since the figure of 17,130 recorded in the 2001 census, with a growth rate of 40%, which is considerably in excess of surrounding towns. As the result of a house-building program, a further 8,000 people are expected to settle in the area over the next few years, making Portishead one of the largest towns in North Somerset. Economy. Local employers include the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, which has its headquarters on the western edge of the town, Gordon School, and numerous care homes for the elderly, as well as a retail complex. The Victorian High Street has retained a number of local shops, such as Morgan Westley, The Outlet, Gary's DIY and Zebra. Despite some larger DIY chains and supermarkets being built, Homebase, Argos, Waitrose, New Look, Peacocks and Pets at Home. In January 2010, Sainsbury's applied for planning permission to build a new store, soon followed by Lidl, Travelodge and Subway. All of these new stores have now been built. More retailers are moving into the area in 2015, such as Wetherspoons, Costa Coffee, Aldi, Majestic Wine and Home Bargains. Landmarks. Courthouse Farmhouse dates from the medieval period but was remodeled in the 17th and 19th centuries. The Grade II * listed building is owned by Bristol City Council, and in 2010 protests from a local residents attempted to stop its sale. The red brick National Nautical School was built by Edward Gabriel in 1905, at a cost of £30,000. Previously it had been based on the training ship HMS Formidable and operated until 1983. It is now part of a private gated community known as Fedden Village. The remains of a former windmill, built in 1832 but disused since 1846, were rebuilt into a two-story house and then, in 1908, incorporated into a golf club house. The building has since been converted into a pub. A small, disused, black village pump remains in Portishead with a strapped-down handle. The 9-metre-high Portishead Point Lighthouse was built at Battery Point in March 1931 by the Chance brothers of Smethwick. The lighthouse is currently maintained by the Bristol Port Company. Blacknor Lighthouse was built in 1894. It was electrified in World War II. In October 2011, after it was no longer needed for navigational purposes, it was sold to a trust for preservation at a cost of £1. The Royal Hotel in the area of Wood Hill was designed and built to serve Brunel's railway line, which finished a few steps away from the hotel. The original building survives as the Royal Inn Pub. It was built in 1830 by the Corporation of Bristol in order to provide a hotel supporting the development of the seaside resort. It is thought to be the only seaside hotel to be built by a public authority during the 19th century. It is a Grade II listed building.